Welcome everybody, I'm Santiago Nieland and this is The Divine Within, the invisible connection with God. In today's episode, we're redefining the end times. Not as destruction, but as transition. Not the end of the world, but the end of an old world and the birth of a new one. Joining me is Diane Labrecque, a longtime Urantia Book student, Unity ambassador, and devoted follower of the living Jesus. Together, we'll explore cosmic cycles, global transitions, and humanity's spiritual awakening, reframing fear into meaning, hope, and purpose. So welcome, Diane. Like always, it's a pleasure to have you here.
It's a pleasure, reciprocal pleasure, especially on that special day.
Especially today that we chose to talk about these topics on Valentine's Day, which is today, so we can spread the love, which, like you always said, Jesus is all love. So we're going to be talking about
Absolutely.
all of what this means. So, diving into our first segment to this conversation and talking about what all this concept of the end times, which, like we said, is more of a end of a period, end of a cycle. Let's talk about the cycles of life and the universe. So let's zoom out always to the cosmos. The universe moves in cycles, expansion and contraction, birth and renewal. The Urantia Book calls this space respiration. Nothing is wasted, nothing truly ends. Everything transforms. We see these patterns everywhere in tides, seasons, seeds, and even caterpillars dissolving before becoming butterflies. Humanity is not collapsing, we're metamorphosing. In this segment, Diane and I explore how cosmic cycles help us understand this moment, not as a crisis, but as a turning point filled with meaning, wonder, and growth. So, how can we define these cycles, Diane?
Well, I would say, first of all, Santiago, that one of the most beautiful teachings of Jesus is that let those who have eyes see. And so for those who have eyes to see, it's been happening for quite a while. And what I have been observing is, and many have been observing, is that we are like at the end of a cycle, when it ends like that. But then at the same time, there's a birth of a new cycle. And it's where they meet at the X, that I would say we are in right now. We're swimming in it. So some people don't see it and they're still wondering, like, what's happening? It's the end of the world. No, it's the end of a world. Big difference. It's not the end of the world. It's the end of a world, and it's the birth of a new world. And that is what is extraordinary. And at the same time, it's almost like a balance of the two, because on one side, we can see the disappearance of more darkness and the appearance of more light. And what is Jesus? The light of truth. And so we're watching all over the world, and there's a lot of truth that's coming up to the surface, and people go like, oh my God, I did not know this. I did not know that. Well, yes, welcome to the club. We're waking up, we're opening our eyes. And so it's that cycle that we go through as individual, as society, as planets, as a world, as the cosmos, right up to paradise, So it's an unending cycle, and it's one intertwining into the other, and it's a dance. It's a beautiful celestial dance.
I like this, and in a way, what we're seeing is this what you just said. That we are, as individuals and society, and then planet, universe, and the existence. The supreme, which is the evolution of God out of everything. So, I like what you're saying, that this is sort of the transition. It's like when you're going from childhood to puberty, or from puberty to adulthood. There are some things that you have to leave behind, and then it's a little bit sad in some cases. You have to, maybe when you're transitioning from being a child to an adolescent, some of the things of being a child, you lose that innocence, but in a way, you start to acquire wisdom. You start to acquire, a commitment, or maybe to be accountable. So you're finishing a cycle. You're finishing that cycle of being a child and going into another cycle. And one is not better than the other, but you're leaving that. You're evolving. You're becoming more mature. And I like this, that instead of seeing, an end, because when in your life you transition from one stage to another. It's not the end of your life, it's just a transition. If I see it that what we are all going through, situation in the world, and I don't think it's only happening to our planet. I think it's happening in a cosmic level. I understand it better how we're going and we're experiencing these growth pains, going from one
Yes.
season to another season, right?
Yes. Yeah, and I really like what you said because you just brought back to my mind an experience I lived this week. I went to a client of mine, and she has a beautiful center for babies, for
Mm-hmm.
children, for newborns, and all that. And as I was just getting ready to leave, I saw this dad. And you know that today fathers are very, very involved with their children. Before it was more like dad goes to work and earns a living and mom stays there. But no, it was a couple right there. And I looked at it and I said, "Oh my God, it looks like it's a very young baby you have." And then the father, oh my God, he looked at me like so proud. I'm the proud, father of this child. The mother, and I looked at her and I said, "Congratulations." And she looked at me like, "Thank you so much." And I said, "How young is that baby?" And the father said, "A week and a half." And I went,
Barely.
"Oh my God." It's what I call them balls of love, little baby love. And it was all love, little like this. And it was so beautiful. And I thought, my God, a week and a half, that means 10 days. Last week, because we were in the middle of this week. So it was last week. It was a little boy. He was still in your
Mm-hmm.
tummy, mommy. He was still there inside you, and now he's among us. And then I reflected, I like that because we know, you and I, and most people know that God works in numbers of 7, 1, 3, 7, okay?
Mm-hmm.
It just made me reflect newborn, and then infant, and then toddler, and then
Mm-hmm.
boy and little girl, and then adolescence, and then adult, and then 7, elderly. So we go through the whole cycle. So
Yeah.
when you look at little children, you don't get mad at them if they're playing with a little truck because they're 3 years old. But when they're 20 years old, they went through another cycle. So life is that's what I call a dance. It's a dance of a very rhythmic dance. So we just have to learn to dance with it, to follow that rhythm. And then we don't dramatize so much, even what's happening on the planet right now. Some people are dramatizing like it's the end of the world. It's not. It's a big change. It's historical and biblical. So it's transformative.
Well, let's talk about these times, and I think I mean a lot of what I talk about and I teach is that if you reflect on your own cycles, on your own life, you kind of understand the bigger cycles. I mean, because everything follows patterns, and the more you understand a pattern from a system,
Mhm.
then you can understand another pattern. So like you're saying, we always go, and especially when we look at the hero's journey, and I think this is a very powerful way of looking at it, and when we use that a lot here in the podcast, there's always a part that even though you have wisdom, even though you reach this level, you go through a transition period. And we're going to talk about seasons in the second segment. But I see that as long as we understand these patterns, and I always taught, that in when you look at waves in the ocean, you have to look at the pattern, and it's always, sequence of shorter waves or and then stronger waves. But you have to understand it depends on which ocean you're looking at, what pattern. But you have to understand each one of it. I mean, each a particular pattern, and I think that's the important thing in life. It's not that you're going to understand everything. I think that it's very important that first you look at it, you try to blend with it, you try to understand it, and once you understand how it's breathing, and we talked about this, the earth, the world is kind of breathing, and these are the patterns of the breath. Once we understand those cycles, and that's why meditation is so good, because you kind of go into the rhythm, into the pulse of the universe, and that's when you start to flow and start to work together with the celestial agencies, with God, in moving forward, but yourself and collectively, right?
Yes, and it's really nice because I'm here in Canada in Montreal. So, needless to tell you, it's winter, it's cold,
Yeah.
lots of snow. But it teaches us one thing, that just like nature has seasons, humans have seasons. And planets have seasons as well. Societies have seasons. So right now it's cold. So we just have to learn to adapt to it. I'm not going to go out. I'm telling you, I'm not going to go out just with a shirt. I know I will catch a cold or get ill. So you need to learn to adapt. There's a season in your life when you are in your spring, when you are in your summer, when you are in your fall. And then no surprise that winter comes. So it's the same thing as a society, even as a country. So it's really cycles within cycles within cycles. And it's to find a harmony, a balance, and to have this inner connection so that you don't feel lost. It's like a leaf being detached from the tree. God incarnated in his son, Jesus Christ Michael, is like the tree of life. And so we are his leaves. Are we attached to him, or are we roaming around in the wind, like on our own? And then let's not be surprised if we hit ourselves and with a few bangs, that hurt. Or if we learn to know where to stay and to connect with, and life becomes so harmonious, so peaceful and beautiful. Doesn't mean to say that bad stuff doesn't happen, but you go through it more smoothly.
Yeah, I think that's what's important. Once you start to know the rhythms and the cycles of life, and I mean, I wanted to, and we're gonna in the third segment we're gonna talk about the Team Jesus Worldwide and much of what you do, but I wanted to see how you understood these cycles. I mean, I wanted to see your in your personal experience, how has been your life and how have you evolved, from maybe, and we talked about this early conception of God, of Jesus, even, and how life and has brought you new conceptions and has evolved you in that relationship with God and with Jesus, and what has that brought you, that sequence or that evolution in your thought, in your relationship, brought to you?
Well, first of all, I have to say Jesus has always been in my life. Being born in Quebec, it was Christianity. And so I've always been in love with Jesus. And I did say on another podcast, as I was invited to do another podcast, I do remember when I was uh, a young little girl just starting in life, maybe 5 years old. I was just starting school. Here, depending on your birthday, you start at 5 or 6. But anyway, all this to say, one morning I came down for breakfast. I come from a family of 12, so we were many people. My mom was doing breakfast, and I came downstairs and all happy. And I said, Mommy, it's so nice. Last night I went to heaven and it was so beautiful. And I was like so impressed to share this as a child, and
Yeah,
it was
I
such
imagine.
a great experience. But then as a mother, I understand now. As an adult, I understand. But then she said, yeah, it's okay, Diane. Just come on. I don't want you to be late for school. Go have your breakfast with everyone else. And I went like, nobody believes me. So I kept
Yeah.
it to myself. But all this to say that I have adapted to the seasons of my life. But at the same time, Jesus has always been in my life. He's blessed me with many experiences. And so I don't need to be convinced. I would rather hope to convince others, but all this.
That's what I like in the stories that, I mean, especially your story, that your evolution and your relationship with Jesus has always been there, and how you've been from a young child, very innocent, very surprised and maybe naive, or yeah, innocent. I don't want to say naive, but that we were saying, that innocence that you lose when you start growing up, and but now that you're older, and that relationship has evolved into a commitment with Jesus, into a communion, not only a commitment, no, that I see in the work that you do, that you dedicate your your time and your mind and your energy to fulfilling what he brought and what he taught about the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. So I see, and that's what I wanted to point out because I think it's a beautiful story and how in your relationship with Jesus.
I dedicate not only my time, Santiago, and this and that, I dedicate my whole life, my entire being, my soul, my spirit. He knows 24/7, and he needs us. He needs us. And so I am totally, it's one thing to, I think it's like the Trinity, okay? It's one thing
Hmm.
to know about Jesus. I would dare to say that most people on the planet have at least heard the name Jesus. So, they know that there's a Jesus. Then it's one thing to know about the teachings, the life and teachings of Jesus, whether it's from the Bible, from the New Testament, from the Urantia Book, the Revelation, which is a revelation in itself, you know. But it's another thing. That's only phase 2. It doesn't stop there. Phase 3 is the culmination of all it, and that is on this beautiful day of Valentine's Day, is to become in love with Jesus. Come to be, not just become, but come to be literally in love with Jesus. And then his life it moves from a black and white movie to a colorful movie, everything is colorful, everything has meaning. You understand? I see myself, um, I would say the child is coming back in me because
That
when you said earlier a little child, instead of to, if I may add, to innocent, I would say pure. A child is
that's good.
pure,
Yes.
has not been corrupted, has not been misguided, has not been duped or fooled or whatever. So we are pure and everything. And this is why Jesus said, "What you do to one of my little ones, when you meet my father, you'll wish you had never existed," because they are so pure. Like that little 1.5-year-old baby this week. It was like a ball of love. All they want is, "Daddy, mommy, love me, take care of me, and keep me warm. It's cold." But I'm making a joke, but it's true. They just need to be loved and taken care of and cherished. So when we are children like this, I was pure. I was just in love with Jesus. And
I like that.
when I say Jesus, I need to everyone to know that it's always the Father and the Son. Like Jesus said, he who has seen the Son has seen the Father, because the Son and the Father are one. So when I say Jesus, I mean God the Father automatically. So there's no separation for me, even though he came for his purpose.
I like that. I like what you're saying about me being pure, and that's the word you said it right. It's not naive. It's not innocent. It's pure. And I like what you're saying. You've been through all this through your life, and in your relationship started maybe innocently, naively, pure, went through all this, acquired all this wisdom, and now I see you coming back to that purity, watching and living as a child, that relationship with Jesus, but with all the wisdom that also entails, with all that responsibility, with all
Yes.
that knowledge, with all that relationship building, let's say, that you've had with Jesus, with God, like you're saying. So I think this is a very interesting way to see how we as individuals have cycles and how the universe, our society, civilization is going through a cycle, and I mean we're going to be talking in the next segment, which is going into the seasons of life. But I think it's quite good to say or to conclude in this first segment how we just need to go with the flow, understand the patterns, understand the cycles, understand that sometimes you don't want the weekend to end, but yeah, Sunday has to come, and then you start Monday. But you're gonna get to Friday eventually, and then you're gonna get to the weekend again. So everything is a cycle, and as we see ourselves and we watch, even the hardships. I like a Buddhist expression that says, "Even this will pass." And I think that's very
Yes.
important because sometimes you're in such suffering that even that will pass eventually. So it's very important that we understand that life and the universe works in cycles, right?
And I would like to say one thing, Santiago, and that is when I mentioned pure. I feel that I am reconnecting with that purity in me, because coming from a large family of 12, you are affected by people around you. And even within my family, I remember I had one of my brothers, he liked uh, to tickle us and get at us, and always try our patience or whatever. And so all this to say, after this, when I went into society, grew up like we all do, I became very, very sensitive to if people would hurt me or say words that would be hurtful, or they would not mean necessarily, they would not have necessarily only pure motives. And so you develop a protection, and so you go into another phase. But now I realize that I'm reaching a stage where I don't really care about the outside anymore. What
Yeah.
what really, truly, and honestly matters in the universe through eternity is my connection with the divine within. So he's with me, and in me, he's with us and in us. And what matters is my connection to be one. In yoga, when you do that, you make
Hmm.
one, you unite. And in French, communion is beautiful because com means as, and then un is one, eon, as one. You become as one. And so this is why I'm finding my child's pure heart again, because I really don't want to care for what, if people are mean, or
Yeah.
if they're nice, thank you, God bless you. And if they're not, you just move on, you bless them. You don't even spend energy feeling bad.
Yeah.
But that's the cycle we have to go through, because as in the middle of the cycle, we are very affected by society, and it has a big impression on a person. But we have
Yeah.
to learn to transcend that and develop the wisdom to connect with the divine. And if he's happy, I'm happy. If he's not happy, I'm not happy. That's it.
Yeah.
Simple.
Very important to go beyond the situations, and not just to take what is outside as it is, and go inside and really transform inside of you, and
Yes.
like you said, go involve and remain pure. I think that's very important. On the Divine Within podcast, we'll share real conversations to help you find a personal connection with God. My goal is to support your faith, growth, and journey toward discovering the divine within yourself. Join us to deepen your faith and spiritual journey.